Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Okay, so this is 4th canto, chapter 11, text 34 and 35. So I'll read 34 and then maybe 35 we can chant together. It's not on the board, so you might need your device. So 4:11:34. Tam prasadaya vatsashu sanatya prashya yukti nayavan mahatam tejaha kulam no bhi bhavishyati. Translation. For this reason, my son, you should immediately pacify Kuvera with gentle words and prayers, and thus his wrath may not affect our family. Purport. In our common dealings, we should maintain friendship with everyone, and certainly with such exalted demigods as Kuvera. Our behavior should be such that no one should become angry and thereby commit a wrong to individuals, families, or society. Text 35. Evam swayam bhuva pautram anushasya manurdruvam tena bhivanditah sakam rishibhi swapuram yayo evam swayam bhuva pautram anushasya manurdruvam tena bhivanditah sakam rishibhi swapuram yayo evam swayam bhuva pautram anushasya manurdruvam tena bhivanditah sakam rishibhi swapuram yayo evam swayam bhuva pautram anushasya manurdruvam evam swayam bhuva pautram anushasya manurdruvam tena bhivanditah sakam rishibhi swapuram yayo. Evam, thus, Swayam Bhuvaha, Lord Swayam Bhuva Manu, Pautram, to his grandson, Anushasya, after giving instruction, Manu, Lord Manu, Dhruva, to Dhruva Maharaj, Tena, by him, Abhivanditaha, being offered obeisances to Sakam, together, Rishibhi, with the sages, Swapuram, to his own abode, Yayo, went. Translation. Thus Swayambhuva Manu, after giving instruction to Dhruva Maharaj, his grandson, received respectful obeisances from him. Then Lord Manu and the great sages went back to their respective homes. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports of the 4th canto, 11th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled Swayambhuva Manu advises Dhruva Maharaj to stop fighting. Om Adhyanatamidam Chakshurunam Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivastava Gaur Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare Rama Rama Rama. So text 34 has a purport, so I'll just read the purport again. In our common dealings, we should maintain friendship with everyone, and certainly with such exalted demigods as Kuber. Our behavior should be such that no one should become angry and thereby commit a wrong to individuals, families, or society. So this is the end of this section. That it's almost coming to an end because in the next chapter, Dhruva Maharaj is going to go back to Godhead. So what is happening in this chapter here is that we know that Dhruva Maharaj's elder brother Uttama has been killed by one of the yakshas, and so Dhruva Maharaj goes to fight with the yakshas, but he doesn't stop with just killing one yaksha, the guy who killed his brother, but he wants to annihilate the whole dynasty. So he's just going on non-stop. And then Swayambhuva Manu being worried that Dhruva Maharaj is getting carried away, he comes down and he is instructing Dhruva Maharaj. And so now he's finished advising Dhruva Maharaj and he's now going back. So I thought it would be good to just go through a quick summary of what are the reasons that Swayambhuva Manu has presented to Dhruva Maharaj for not continuing to fight. So he starts his presentation by first saying that you've definitely proved affection for your brother, by taking revenge. It's not just that you've killed one yaksha, you've killed quite a few. So you have sufficiently proved how much you loved your brother. So if that is the reason that you're engaging in this killing, then you can stop because you've satisfied that reason by proving affection for your brother. And then he goes on to say that since you have now proven the affection for your brother, why are you engaged in such bodily activities? Because you are taking revenge on the yakshas, thinking that your elder brother was killed. But this is acting in the bodily concept of love. And this is not how a devotee behaves. A devotee behaves to satisfy the Supreme Lord. He does not behave to satisfy his own senses. So Swayambhuva Manu was petitioning Dhruva Maharaj, that this is not the behavior of a devotee. As I was saying, that a devotee behaves in a way to satisfy Krishna. And Krishna is satisfied when a devotee greets others with tolerance, mercy, friendship, and equality. And Dhruva Maharaj was definitely not doing that in this case. So Swayambhuva Manu was gently reminding him. And then he moves on to his other reasons. So he says that if you were to think about it, then you would realize that actually your brother has not been killed by this yaksha. Finally, he is receiving the results of his own karma. And the Supreme Lord is awarding everyone the results of their karma, of their fruitive activities. But at the same time, the Supreme Lord is not affected by such action because everything is happening through his agency. And then Swayambhuva Manu, he spends quite some time explaining that how Krishna is the original cause of all causes. So he's trying to establish that actually Dhruva Maharaj should not think that his brother was killed by this yaksha, but Dhruva Maharaj should actually consider that finally Krishna is in control, that Krishna is the supreme controller. And so that's why he should give up his anger. And then Swayambhuva Manu also explains that finally, the birth and death of every living entity is caused by Krishna through the agency of time. So Krishna is killing everyone through the agency of time. And then he says, so because of these reasons, finally, since Krishna is the controller of everyone and everything, and because it is by his power that everything is happening, that is why you should surrender to him. And what does surrender to Krishna mean? So he's saying that follow your plan, like follow his plan, that don't do your own thing. Don't act independently. And it's Prabhupada in that purport, he writes, that this is the material disease, that we just want to do our own thing. We don't want to act according to the plan of the Supreme Lord. And then Swayambhuva Manu tells him that you've already achieved the ultimate perfection of life. Everyone has to go through quite an endeavor to achieve the aim that you have already achieved. And you achieved it at the age of 5 years old. So there is nothing really left for you to achieve because you've achieved the Supreme Lord who awards all benedictions. So what is left for you to achieve? So that's why give up this and now turn your attention back to Krishna. And then finally he concludes by saying that if you contemplate on this instruction that I've given you, then you will be able to give up your anger, because these instructions will act like a medicine on your disease. And then finally he says that anger is the foremost impediment, is the foremost enemy in one's spiritual life. And one who comes under the control of anger becomes a source of dread to others. And then it comes to today's verse where he is saying that this is, for these reasons, you should stop fighting with the yakshas. Yeah, and then in the next chapter, Dhruva Maharaj is going to go back to Godhead. So there are quite a few points in this. There are quite a few points in this purport that are coming up, but I thought to focus on a couple. So the first, the main thing that I wanted to talk about is anger. This is quite a purifying topic for me to speak about because I'm quite challenged by anger and I find it really hard to conquer my own anger. I was trying to get out of giving class on this verse. I only read it last night, and so first I tried to convince Madam. I said, I think you should give this because you at least have the proper behavior to give this class. I don't know how am I going to give this. And then he just very conveniently excused himself and said, no, you should give it. So here I am. So yeah, I'm just repeating what Prabhupada is saying, and I'm just saying this for my own purification. Okay, so the first thing that I would like to focus on is that what is it that actually causes anger? So Prabhupada in his Prabhupada, we know in this chapter 3, towards the end, he speaks about when Arjuna asks Krishna that how is it that one engages in activities even though they don't want to engage in them? Why is it that one engages in sinful acts unwillingly? And then Krishna says that this is actually due to lust. And so Prabhupada is explaining in that purport that originally every living entity is in a pure condition, and that pure condition is that we all have love for Krishna. But when that love for Krishna, when it gets converted into our own lust, or when it comes in contact with material nature, it gets transformed into lust. And invariably, this material lust is never satisfied. And because it's not satisfied, it produces anger. So the way my Guru Maharaj puts it is that he says that unsatisfied material desires produce anger. Now, lust is a product of the mode of passion. So lust is symptomatic of the mode of passion, and then when it degrades, it goes down to anger, and anger is symptomatic of the mode of ignorance. So this is how it comes about. So in that purport, actually, Prabhupada is explaining very beautifully that each one of us, we have, because we are parts and parcels of Krishna, so we have partial independence, Jiva Shakti, that is the independence that we have. That what am I actually going to do with my energy? What am I going to do with my attention? Am I going to use it to serve Krishna, or am I going to use it to serve my own senses? So Prabhupada explains that when we misuse our independence, then this propensity for serving Krishna, it gets turned into the propensity for sense enjoyment. And then immediately we come under the sway of lust. And then this lust, it further degrades into anger. So this is what actually Swambhuva Manu is reminding Dhruva Maharaj that that you are a devotee. So why are you behaving like this? A devotee does not, as I was saying, as he said before, that a devotee should not behave. A devotee behaves to satisfy Krishna, not to satisfy his own senses. And our senses are automatically satisfied when we engage them in serving Krishna, in satisfying Krishna. So you see that in Dhruva Maharaj's case, he started off by killing one yaksha, but then it seems like he's getting carried away because he just continues non-stop. So that's the reason why we actually need. So that's the reason why we need good guidance and mentorship, and we see that is what is happening in Dhruva Maharaj's case. When it seemed like that, he started on the right note, but then he's starting to get get carried away. And that's when Swayambhuva Manu came and he was advising Dhruva Maharaj, that stop. This behavior doesn't befit you. So stop acting in this way. So this is the reason why we also need good association and we need constant guidance and mentorship. If someone like Dhruva Maharaj, who is a liberated soul, can get carried away, then what to speak of us? My spiritual master says that we should be surprised in Kali Yuga if we remember anything, and we shouldn't be surprised at all if we forget everything. So we are living in an atmosphere which is packed with ignorance, which means that we are living in an atmosphere which is packed with forgetfulness. It's not just outside of us; it's also inside of us. So basically, right now, instead of being parts and parcels of Krishna, we are like parts and parcels of forgetfulness. So we're just always forgetful. And we have a very strong sense for sense. We have a very strong urge for sense enjoyment. And one of the purports Prabhupada says that the spirit of sense enjoyment is current for a very long time. And that's the reason why we have to be very careful that we don't get carried away. For example, for the sake of service, we might interact with the material energy, but we have to be careful of how much that interaction is, because we can get carried away very, very easily. And we have several instances in the Bhagavatam. So the Bhagavatam is actually is like our GPS. The devotees are like our GPS. And that's the reason why we need this wonderful association on a daily basis. This is like our course correction. We cannot be in this illusion, okay, that I'm following Krishna consciousness, and so I'm okay. But actually, if we do our practice ourselves, and if we don't actually make the endeavor to associate with devotees deeply and seek guidance, then naturally, because of the environment that we are in, we slowly just go off track. And before you know, you've spent, you're taking the scenic route. So we need course correction constantly. And we see an example of this. We see both positive and negative examples in the Bhagavatam. So for example, Prithu Maharaj, not Prithu Maharaj, Bharat Maharaj, he's a negative example of this. We know what happened to him. He's at a very elevated state. Of course, this is for our instruction. So he's at a very elevated state. He's at the state of Bhava Bhakti, but he's doing it all by himself. And so then in the course of time, he comes across an allurement and he is not able to sustain his practice. And it starts out quite simply, but then it just increases, and he gets completely carried away to the extent that he just totally drops his spiritual practice. And he's even aware of it. But still, he's like, okay, that this is my first duty now to take care of this dependent of mine. It brings to my mind, recently Mother Devi was here and she was speaking quite a few classes. And she was speaking on the false ego. So she was saying that our mind is because the mind is influenced by false ego, the mind is so expert in coming up with justification for everything that we are doing. So that's the reason why we need the association of devotees, like just reading the Shastra by ourselves. Okay, it's much better than not reading it. But it's like we have the tendency to kind of take in what we want to and just completely overlook what we don't want. So so that's the reason why we need to have devotees who are actually seeking our benefit, our progress in bhakti. It's you can have devotees who you just have like Hari Bol relationships with. But you actually need to have devotee friends who can tell you, okay, let's stop. What you're doing is not right, and not say anything out of hesitation. So that's an example of Bharat Maharaj. He had no one to correct his course, and he went really off course. What could have been completed in that one lifetime, he had to wait 2 other lifetimes to complete that. And then we have another example, and then we have a positive example of Prithu Maharaj. So we know that Prithu Maharaj, he started doing these horse sacrifices, Ashwamedha Yajnas. And King Indra, he got a bit envious, especially when Prithu Maharaj reached the 99th sacrifice, because King Indra, he has performed 100 and no one has outdone him. So King Indra got really concerned, that if Prithu Maharaj does the 100th one, then what is going to happen? And so then that's why he would just keep stealing his horse. And then Prithu Maharaj, he would keep recovering his horse. And as we know, King Indra, he was resorting to, I don't know if I can use the word, but he was resorting to illicit means to gaining back his horses. And every time he would dress as a bogus sannyasi. We read in the Bhagavatam that it was starting a new line of, of bogus spiritualists. And so then Lord Brahma came and he advised Prithu Maharaj that, that you know who you are and you don't actually need to do this. Just like Swayambhuva Manu is advising Dhruva Maharaj, that you've already achieved perfection. So you don't need to do what you're doing. You've already proven your point. So similarly, Lord Brahma is advising Prithu Maharaj that stop. Just by doing 100 sacrifices, you're not going to achieve anything more. So let Indra be happy and you also be happy. And so Prithu Maharaj, he just accepted the humble position, and he stopped the sacrifice. And then you have another negative example, which I think is quite vivid, is the example of Dhritarashtra. So we see that before the Battle of Kurukshetra started, almost every great personality advised him to not do this. To not fall victim to the attachment that he had with his son, and to not sanction this battle. Everyone advised him, but he just refused to listen. He just also openly accepted that I have so much attachment for my son that I'm blinded by it. And I know that what I'm doing is not right, but still, I just have too much attachment for him. So he was given so much good advice, but he did not listen to it. And then finally, at the end of the battle, when he lost everything, then Vidura comes again, and then he again advises him. And this time he takes his advice. And then we know what the result is after he actually listens to Vidura. He achieves liberation from the cycle of birth and death. So it's quite an important point here, that we see in the case of Bharat Maharaj and in the case of Dhritarashtra. And I'm sure if we reflect, we can see in our own lives as well, that actually when we take advice, even though it might feel, that this is not going in my favor, or that this is not what I want to do, it does save us a lot of time. That, that we can reflect and think that our life is so short, human life is so short. And we are so fortunate to be in the association of serious devotees who want to make progress in Krishna consciousness. So do I just want to waste my time following the whims of my mind and elongate this journey? Because all of us are here, we are in Krishna consciousness. So which means that sooner or later we are going to go back to Godhead. But how long is that journey going to be? That is up to us. And so we're seeing in this, so do we want to be like Dhritarashtra and elongate the journey and suffer so much? Rather, rather follow the bhakti culture, follow the advice, have good mentorship and good guidance, and actually make our progress quick and short. So that I found is the biggest point that is coming from these sections. And so that's the reason why we have Nityam Bhagavatas. We need to do Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya. So we need to hear from the Bhagavatam every day. And we need to serve. We need to serve the devotees. We need to serve the spiritual master. Because the other point here is that in order that we might be in good association, but in order to be able to take on the advice and guidance that we are receiving, we need to have a humble mood of service. We actually need to have a strong service attitude, and we actually need to be serving the devotees who are advising us. Because first we submit, and that submission means service. And then when we receive guidance, we actually can take it on, and Krishna makes it possible for us to accept that guidance in our life, to actually apply it. Otherwise, devotees can be advising us, but we may not be able to take it on. So this is Krishna's process. First comes Pranipatena. So first comes submission and service. And then Krishna makes it possible for us to actually hear. And those words sink into our heart. And then we have the strength to make the changes that we need to make in our lives. So just hearing is not enough. It has to be preceded by service and submission and humility, that actually I need help. So in this, so just in the previous translation, I'm going to read it. This is text 34. So this is where Swayambhuva Manu is saying that just consider my instructions, because by considering these instructions, this will act as medicinal treatment upon the disease. And in the Sanskrit, the word is Shrutena Bhuyasa. And so Prabhupada is explaining in the purport that, okay. So now we've discussed anger, that what actually causes anger. And then we've looked at that what is the cause of anger is lust, and that this happens when we misuse our independence. When we misuse our independence, instead of serving Krishna, we serve our own senses. And this is the reason why we need devotee association. So that is one way to control our anger, is always being in good association, is always hearing from the devotees. And now here, this is the second way that Prabhupada is saying. This is by hearing Bhagavatam. So by constantly hearing about devotional service, one can check the force of anger, which is detrimental to the process of devotional service. Srila Parikshit Maharaj said that the constant hearing of the pastimes of the Lord is the panacea for all material diseases. Everyone, therefore, should hear about the Supreme Personality of Godhead constantly. By hearing, one can always remain in equilibrium, and thus his progress in spiritual life will not be hampered. So these pastimes that are there in the Bhagavatam, these are actually meant, we're actually meant to study them. And actually we're meant to take shelter of these personalities in the Bhagavatam. Because everyone in the Bhagavad, all the personalities that are there in the Bhagavatam, they are going through situations that we also go through. And so then when we go through these situations, we can take shelter of these personalities. Of course, we can't act exactly as they are, but it's a great inspiration. It's a level to aspire to. That, yeah. So for example, from this, I was thinking just how Swayambhuva Manu was telling him that contemplate on this, contemplate on my instructions. So I was thinking, that when we get angry, we can turn to this pastime and contemplate that actually we can contemplate on all these reasons that Swayambhuva Manu has given to Dhruva Maharaj. That this is why you're getting angry, because you're acting in the body of the concept of life. So we can contemplate that when we are angry. Of course, anger is it's one of the 6 urges. So it's very hard to control it, especially if we are driven by the mode of passion. It's a very strong force, and it can be quite hard to check it. But if we are able to check it, then we should contemplate that what is actually the cause of my anger. Most of the times there is some element of false ego involved. Because when there is false ego involved, then it's hard to give it up. But when it is purely for service, you can give it up very easily without it actually affecting your mind and body. So we can contemplate, that what is the best way to respond in such a situation. How did Dhruva Maharaj respond? And how did Prithu Maharaj respond? And then another example is the example of Vasudeva. When Vasudeva and Devaki, they were going home after getting married, and Kamsa, he hears the prophecy and he is about to kill Devaki. And then after that, he also kills the first 6 sons of Devaki. But how does Vasudeva respond in that situation? He's just thinking, okay, that this is Krishna's will. So we can compare, that all these examples are there. And even though we may behave in a wrong way, but even though we may behave in a wrong way, but because these examples are there, and if we are constantly hearing, then we will be able to correct our course. So in the previous, in one text before, Swayambhuva Manu is saying, just in this text actually, for this reason, my son, you should immediately pacify Kuvera with gentle words and prayers, and thus his wrath may not affect our family. So if we are constantly hearing, then we will be able to take corrective action. Otherwise, we might just think that actually what I did was right. So I don't need to apologize, and yeah, I don't need to take any corrective action. But if we are constantly hearing, then we realize that actually my behavior was not correct, and I need to fix it. Okay, so this is what I have to say. And then I have the last, this one last point, because I thought that, because when I was reading this section, this came, it came as a question in my head. And so I thought that possibly maybe someone will ask this question. So this is, yeah. So someone will have this question that, what do you do when your anger is justified, especially when it is anger in especially when it is anger in relation with devotional service? So you see that someone's not done their service properly, and it just really gets you. And of course, you want to have a very high standard. You want to see that Krishna is served nicely. And when you see that someone is not, when the service is not being done properly, then you find it agitating. Also, when we are working in an association of devotees, we see that everyone has their own, everyone has their own opinion on how Krishna should be served. And we might have this idea that actually my way of serving Krishna is better than others, which may be, or it may not be true. So is this anger justified? So this connects with this case of Dhruva Maharaj, that Dhruva Maharaj, he is a king. And so it is his duty to maintain law and order in society. So his brother was killed, which means that the offender should also be killed. So he was not wrong. Dhruva Maharaj was not wrong in killing the offender. And also because he was doing his duty. And also Dhruva Maharaj is a liberated personality. So this concept of right and wrong actually does not apply to him, because whatever he is doing, he's doing for Krishna's satisfaction. So, but in this case, it seemed that, and of course, that in order to engage in this service of killing someone, there has to be some level of anger. And so you also see that Prabhupada says that Krishna also incites Arjuna to fight, because without anger, it is not possible to fight. So that emotion is necessary, right? We saw that how Hanuman, he set Lanka on fire. So that emotion of anger was necessary in that case. But Prabhupada makes this amazing point. I'm going to read it. Where did it go? Okay. But anger is such that if one increases, it increases unlimitedly. So this is something that we have to be careful about, that even though our anger may be justified, but we should not increase our anger, because it just goes on increasing unlimitedly. In order that Dhruva Maharaj's kingly anger not exceed the limit, Manu was kind enough to check his grandson. Dhruva Maharaj could understand the purpose of his grandfather, and he immediately stopped the fight. And then in this purport, Prabhupada, he gives the story of Narada Muni. He says that, that there was a snake who became a devotee by hearing the instruction of Narada Muni. And because it is the snake's business to bite, once the snake becomes a devotee, he stops biting. And because he stops biting people, so now kids and other people, they come and they abuse this poor snake. They're throwing stones at him. So the snake is all beaten up, and he goes to Narada Muni and he says, that on your instruction, I stopped biting, but now this is what is happening. So Narada Muni says, don't bite, but do not forget to expand your hood as if you were going to bite. Then they will go away. And then Prabhupada explains, similarly, a devotee is always non-violent. He is qualified with all good characteristics. But in the common world, when there is mischief made by others, he should not forget to become angry, at least for the time being, in order to drive away. Yeah. So this is how Prabhupada is explaining Dhruva Maharaj's anger and necessity of anger, but to make sure that we don't get carried away. Okay, and then to end with, I'm reading this book by Mother Devi, Sheltering Relationships. So I thought I would just read these to you. So normally when we get angry, I don't know about you, but in my case, when I get angry, it normally comes out in harsh words. So she's giving 3 tips here on how to that when you feel that you're being attacked by anger, how do you respond? So the first is that because often when we get angry, we either want to blame someone, we want to criticize someone, we want to correct them. Yeah, we just want to, we just want to take it out on someone. So she says, so the first point is, of course, she's saying, control your anger and request a senior person to address the issue. So if you're really angry at some devotee or if you're angry at someone, then you talk to your senior, because if it is not your place to correct someone, then we shouldn't correct someone. It's always better to just consult the senior and say that this is what's happening, and this service is not being done properly, or there's not proper behavior on the part of this devotee, and it's really agitating me, and let the senior person handle it. And if you have a strong urge to respond to your anger straight away, don't do it. That's what she says. Sleep on it. Sleep on it so that the false ego gets some time to relax. So this could, this could take overnight, or it could take several days, or it could take several years. But just don't respond on it until and unless you know that you're not actually acting out of your false ego. And if you feel that you have to take some action because it is absolutely necessary for you to take some action, then before you take some action, you should pray to Krishna that please allow me to be an instrument and offer this correction in a humble and well-wishing mood of service. So that's what I could. Those are the points that I could come up with from this purport. So we looked at the cause of anger and how we can actually plot some potential solutions for anger. So thank you so much for your kind attention. If there are any corrections, any questions, any comments, maybe if someone has some tips on how to control their anger and on what they do when they're attacked by anger, please feel free to share.
Thank you very much for your so it said Bhagavad Gita, lust is the root cause of everything. But can we also say that after lust, then we have the lust under management? It can also be like fear, like you're angry because you are afraid. Maybe you have experienced that, like, I mean, I experienced it. Why am I angry with my brother? I would do everything to hurt him. And then when I was older, I realized why I was so angry with him. Because he was doing something that's not according to the behavior. So I would correct him, right? So, but it was not like, it was more of, I was afraid. I was afraid that, he will cause something bad or, So the direct cause, which I try to understand, is I was afraid. And so I was trying to reflect, what is it that made me afraid? My brother's behavior or something like that made me angry. So I think that's also one thing that we have to assess in our hearts. What are those things that make me afraid and make me angry? Sometimes we're angry because, you want everything to be very clean and it's not clean, right? Because you have the reputation that, you are very clean and it's not clean. Then it destroys your reputation. So it can be basis for maintaining the reputation. And you can handle something like that. And in many ways, especially in devotional service, then Krishna humbles us. By that very service that we're engaged in, Krishna makes everything floating. It brings down to humble us. Yeah, so that's what I think.
Yeah, I was just it brings to my mind this point made by Mother Devaki that we are that in all our interactions, it's the false ego that is acting. So, like the example that you're giving in this case as well, like when we, the cause of anger is that when something is not happening according, it's not going the way I want, then it makes me angry. And actually, Prabhupada here, this chapter 12, when he's listing the qualities of a devotee, he says, generally, a materialistic person becomes very happy when there is something for his sense gratification and his body. But when he sees that others have something for their sense gratification and he hasn't, he is sorry and envious. When he is expecting some retaliation from an enemy, he is in a state of fear. And when he cannot successfully execute something, he becomes dejected. A devotee who is always transcendental to all these disturbances is very dear to Krishna. Thank you so much. Granthra Srimad Bhagavatam ki.